What up, gamers and fellow streamers? My name's Mario, aka MX Glory, and in this video, I'm going to go over my single PC setup and some of the OBS settings that I use to stream. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I want to start with the boring stuff first, going from the outside in. So first, my tower here, it's a Fractal Design Meshify C. I got the dark tinted version. It works great. It's all airflow. I have an air cooler for the CPU. Nothing too special. Anything that has good enough airflow for what you're going to be getting is more than enough. And moving on to the power supply, I have a Corsair RM 650 watt power supply. It's more than enough to power what I got. I've actually had this on my old PC and I just recycled it onto my new one. A good way to find out if you need enough power or if you have enough power is to go to a power supply calculator. There's plenty of them online. Enter all the components and all the wattages that they'll give out, and you'll get a total wattage of what you'll need, so you can kind of get what power supply that will work for you. For me, I think my computer is drawing around 350, 400 watts. I just want a little bit of headroom, so this 650 watts plenty. Moving on to the next part, storage. I actually have two of these drives, Samsung 970 EVOs, 1 terabyte. I have one as my boot drive, which I have all programs that I use often, like Chrome, Photoshop, some video editing software. And on the second one, I have all my games, Steam library, anything from Origin. I have Battle.net on here as well. Just purely games, maybe some off programs that I don't really use too often. I use on this drive. Pretty fast. The reason I went with two M.2 drives is because I wanted no hard drives visible on my build. I just wanted everything on the motherboard itself, which works great because you can't really tell that they're there. And onto the RAM. This RAM is a little pricey. I ended up getting it at mono price, and I got another kit on Amazon. It's a Crucial Ballistics Elite 3600 megahertz DDR4. I got a 16 gig kit, but I got two 16 gig kits. The reason I got this kit was because for the CPU that I got, it runs perfect. I haven't had to adjust anything. Just a couple of things on the BIOS, like XMP. You want to enable that in the BIOS, and just make sure it clocks 3600. I haven't had any issues with it. Plus, it looks amazing. I don't really like a lot of the RGB stuff, but to each their own. And to the motherboard, Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite. I got the non-Wi-Fi version. This is the Wi-Fi version here. It's the exact same thing. I just don't have Wi-Fi on my motherboard because I don't use it. Right next to my router, so I just plug in anyways. This runs the CPU that I got perfectly fine. I can overclock it as much as I'm capable of. It's got one little bit of RGB, which is right next to the Aorus symbol here. But I haven't had any issues with it. It runs perfectly fine. And out to the meat and potatoes, CPU. I got an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X. I didn't need to get something this massive with 12 cores. The reason I did is because I want to have as much future-proof as possible for all the content that I would possibly make in the future. So I want to be able to cut all my rendering time in half. Plus, it's a great streaming PC. With the single PC setup, running everything on a 3900X is amazing. I use X264 in OBS, and I haven't had any hiccups in game. Everything runs totally smooth. I'll show you some of the settings in OBS to kind of get everything working. I stream at 720, mainly because of the limitation that my internet has, but I'll get into that a little bit later. To cool the CPU, I have a Be Quiet Darkrock Pro 4. It's a massive air cooler. I think there's a couple millimeters of space clearance between the cooler and the glass, and it cools the CPU great. I'm at 62 degrees right now. It's running a little bit warm just because I'm recording right now, but I hardly hear it. It'll ramp up when the temps go up. But other than that, it's a little tricky to install the fans. If you're going to get something similar to this, you can get the Noctua version, which is great. I just didn't really like the brown color that Noctua is known for. Since then, though, they've released a black version. If you're going to get the all black version, get that if you want a blacked out PC. I wanted a blacked out PC, so I got the Be Quiet cooler. And for graphics, this is way overpriced for this GPU. I actually got this GPU on sale for $499. I got it from B&H Photo. Right now it's $849, but it's an EVGA GeForce GTX 1080 Ti. And this GPU, it's great for gaming. You can actually stream with it if you want. Using the new NVENC encoder. I stream some games that rely purely on GPU performance, so I want as much GPU horsepower as I can get, and this one's plenty. Plus it was on sale. I didn't really need a 2000 series, but in the future, if I ever want to upgrade, I will. I'll probably just recycle this into like a server build or something, or a two PC setup, and I'll just use this on my second PC. And before we get into the OBS settings, I kind of want to show you my speed test results here. Right now I'm getting 290.6 megs down, 15.5 megs up. The number you want to concentrate on is the upload speed. The higher the better. The higher the megs, the more bitrate you'll be able to push out to your audience. I'm streaming right now at 4500 bitrate, which is great for 720. I don't really need to stream anymore. But because it is copper, it's not a constant 4500 bitrate. I'll get into that real quick with OBS here. So in OBS, these are my settings here. I'll just go through the most important stuff. You'll obviously want to link your Twitch account or any other streaming service that you have. You'll link it here. In the output, I can't change the settings now, but I will. I'll go over them briefly here. So these are my settings here in on the streaming tab. First of all, you want to end up changing it from simple to advanced on the output mode. That way you can get these extra tabs and some extra settings. And on the streaming tab, right now I'm using the encoder, the X264 encoder. I ignore this rescale output. You can change this in a different section. You don't want to touch this section here. The rate control, I use CBR, constant bit rate at 4500, and 4500 equates to 4.5 megs, which is great for 720. If you're going to be streaming at 1080 at 60 FPS, you want to go at least 6000. That's the most that Twitch allows. If you're on Mixer or something, you can push 10 megs if your internet supports it, especially if you have fiber. I wish I did, but I don't. Keyframe interval 2. Because of that 3900X, though, I'm able to push out a slow preset, which ups that quality. Basically on these presets, the lower it is, especially on placebo, the better the quality. I don't want to push it more than slow. Slow is great for 720. Especially at 4500, but I don't have any issues or any hiccups with it. Profile main, you can go either main or high. I choose main. Everything else you just leave blank. For recording, these are my recording settings for local recording, not for streaming. And the bit rate, you'll want to have at least 20,000 bit rate. This doesn't really matter here, but the higher the better. Keyframe still at 2, preset I have it at medium, which is fine. I could set it to slow if I want to, but because I'm pushing that bit rate, it's going to have that quality anyways. For audio, track 1, I do 160, and all the other tracks, I just left at 160 as well, but you can change those as if you need. Relay buffer, I leave unchecked. For the audio, I have a little bit of a different setup. For the desktop 1 and 2, I have those disabled because I have a Go XLR mixer. I'm using the broadcast stream mix, and everything just goes through the broadcast stream mix. So I just have one bar with all my sounds, but I can control all the volume on the mixer, which is great. The second microphone is my wireless headset. So if I do want to use my wireless headset, I can, or the wireless microphone. I don't though. I don't really have a need for it. Everything else is I leave default. I don't check any of these hotkeys or anything. For the video, if you remember on the output in the streaming tab, the rescale output, you don't want to change this part. If you do want to downscale your 1080, you can actually just on this output scaled resolution, if you drop that down to 720, that'll make you stream at 720. So these two numbers here, the base and the output, the base is what your native resolution is at. So, or not the native resolution, but what resolution you want your canvas to be in OBS. So mine, I have it at 1080. I have a 1440p monitor. I could set it to 1440p, but I don't really need to. I just downscaled it to 1080p. So that's the canvas that I have in OBS. So that's it's very common for wallpapers or overlays or anything. Everything's at 1080 anyways. So I just keep it at 1080. It's easier to work with. And then I'll downscale it to 720 when I stream. Obviously when I'm recording, I'll up it to 1080 because I'm not really pushing out any content over the internet. So I don't really need to downscale it. So I leave the output at 1080 for recording, 720 for when I'm streaming. The downscale filter, I leave on the highest setting here. You could use the cubic downscale filter, which is kind of in the medium. This downscale filter here provides the best scaling. Since I'm downscaling from 1080 to 720, I want the highest quality I can get. So I'll use the best downscale filter, which is the very bottom option, which is this one here. Common FPS value, obviously it's 60. If you can't push out 60 FPS, you can try 45 or 30. 30 is more common if you can't push out the 60 FPS. For hotkeys, I don't have anything filled out except for capture foreground window, which is actually the game capture. I have it set to Shift F9. So that way in OBS, in a scene, I can just have one game capture, and if I'm playing multiple games, rather than having every single game as a source, I can just have one source with a game capture. I'll hit my hotkey and then it just puts that game onto the window so you guys can see it. In advanced, I leave everything as default except for one very important thing here. If you scroll down to network, this first checkbox here, dynamic changed bitrate or dynamically changed bitrate to manage congestion is beta. You want to enable this, especially if you don't have a constant internet connection. So what this does is, so I'm streaming at 4500 bitrate. My upload can reach anywhere between 20 to 30 megs. On average, is anywhere between 15 and 20. 45 megs is great, and with a dynamic bit rate, what it'll do is that if there's any network traffic that's causing any slowdown, especially on the upload, your stream will dynamically change based on whatever traffic is going through your network. So if, say, I have a Plex server that I have friends and family watch, so if I have a bunch of people watching a movie or a show, my bit rate will change from 4500, it'll go down to maybe 2000 or 2500, maybe 1500 if there's a lot of network traffic. I can obviously up the bit rate to maybe 6000 in OBS, but that just means the bit rate is going to change more dramatically because of all the traffic that I'm allowing to go to Plex. Obviously I can limit that, but I haven't had any issues with it. And once I've set the dynamic bitrate and enabled that, and then limit the bandwidth on my side, it doesn't really go below 1500. But you just kind of want to play with it. I've tried it with it not enabled, and the main difference between having dynamic bitrate enabled and not enabled is that if it's not enabled, you will have skipped frames, especially if your internet isn't constant. Meaning it's not getting a constant upload. If you have fiber, great, don't enable it. You'll have your constant bitrate and you won't have any issues. But for people who have a copper connection like I do, dynamic bitrate works pretty well because I can stream at 4500 bitrate, but if there's traffic going through the network, it'll lower the bitrate, but I won't skip frames. I'll only suffer in quality for the stream during that time period where it's kind of where there's a lot of network traffic. It doesn't really happen very often. I do notice that there's one time where I had someone watch like a 1080p movie on my Plex one time, and the stream just went totally gray because of how much bandwidth it was pushing out. At that point, I had to limit the bandwidth on Plex just so it doesn't mess up the stream. And after that, it was working fine. But those are the settings. It's fairly easy to set up. I think the first time I ever used OBS was many years ago, and it was very overwhelming. But since then, with a little bit of tinkering and kind of playing around with it, you'll get the hang of it, and you'll know what to change and what not to change based on your current setup. So if you have something similar to mine, maybe these settings will work. If you do have like a fiber internet connection, we have like a gig up and down, you can definitely output 1080p at 60 FPS at 6000 bit rate all day long and not have any hiccups. So that's pretty much it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below, and I'll go ahead and read through all of them and answer any questions that you might have. I'll go ahead and leave Amazon affiliate links in the description below of all the PC parts that I currently use for my setup. And I'll go ahead and link a couple screenshots of my OBS settings. That way you guys have an idea exactly what I'm using. That way you don't have to go reference the video and go back and forth. I'll just leave some screenshots down below. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. If you've come this far, I want to say thank you for watching the entire video. If you have any questions on the setup that I have, maybe some suggestions that you may have, because I'm not an expert, I'm just trying to help everyone out based on my experience. Leave everything in the comments below. Go ahead and subscribe, like, and watch me on Twitch. I stream every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 6 p.m. PST, and on the weekends too. And sometimes on my off days when I have some time. But I'll catch you on the next one. Later.